Actually, they really stood.
He's ready to move downstairs. This way, Pumpkin. You've got 10 minutes.
And here is the back side of the Palace of the Emperors. Now we will drive to the Circus Maximus. You see the big area of the palace where the emperors used to live. Probably this has not been identified by archaeologists, but this section was the place where, probably the servants were living, or it was a kind of storing place. Because the main facade of the palace is on the opposite side. We will drive by with the bus, with the coach. And this is probably, part of the galleries they had for storing. The palace was immense. They had something like 2,000 servants. So you can imagine how many rooms they used to have.
Not in a hurry.
Well, there were not trade unions at the time. So. See, I did that. Oh, here's John.
This is what she was talking about.
On the left bank, we have the 7 hills of Rome. They're important because the first people in Rome started inhabiting the hills of Rome, because they were, the higher, the safer. The Palatino or Palatine Hill, it's important because here stood the immense palace of the emperors. We will see the palace from the top of a different hill, and we will have a beautiful view of the palace in a moment. But first of all, I will tell you about this big green valley that we have here on the left hand side, your right hand side.
I don't know.
This is the valley of the Circus Maximus, the Circo Massimo. The Circus Maximus was the biggest of the Roman circuses for chariot races. Here you can see on your left hand side just a few ruins which are being brought to light. A lot of things are still buried, have not been excavated, and part of the circus, one part is still buried and one part is not existing anymore. Now that we drive by the circus, we go just round the circus, you'll see how huge this circus was. It could contain a number of persons, which was roughly 250,000 people. They were all sitting on the long sides. So this means that, for example, you see the sloping side was full of steps, and people used to sit on these steps. And the track was some 600 meters long, which is, I think, 1,200 feet long, and chariots had to make 7 laps of this valley. In the center, there used to be a low wall dividing the track. So the low wall was known as spina. Spina means spine, backbone. It was the backbone of the circus. And it was decorated with statues, with Egyptian obelisks. And generally there were 7 eggs or 7 dolphins, which were used for counting the laps. So 7 statues of dolphins or 7 statues of eggs, which were used for counting the laps. Here, where you see these pine trees or umbrella pines, was the entrance gate. This means that chariots started their own race from here. Chariot races were very popular in Rome. Charioteers were usually divided in 4 different teams, and they were recognized according to the colors they were wearing. We had the blues, the greens, the whites, and the red. And the chariot races were very popular in Rome. You can, for example, imagine all the people crowding the place, and almost all day, because races usually started in the morning, and there was something like 100 races a day. Every race was 7 laps.
Wow.
So the Romans were really mad for this kind of games. And here too, usually like at the Coliseum, people did not pay an entrance fee. It was absolutely free. The reason why the emperors were so generous is not that they were very good fellows, but the reason is that people lived in Rome in very bad conditions. There were a lot of poor people, which survived more than were living. And the emperors enjoyed an enormous power, an enormous richness. And to keep these people quiet, say silent, because they were afraid of revolutions or so, they gave a lot of opportunities for fun. So people didn't think about their real conditions, but they thought that everything was fine. And that's why the games were very frequent in Rome. An historian, which is a famous one, he made a study about daily life in ancient Rome. Think that obviously it's an hypothesis, we don't know exactly, but he made a study, and from the study the result is that in Rome in 1 year there were 186 days of celebration, games and so on. So when you hear the people in the north of Italy saying that the Romans are lazy, because that's what they say up in the north about the people from Rome, maybe it's because in the 2000 years ago people used to work 1 day and the other day was holiday, or Here you can see we are now on the Aventino Hill. This is the Aventine Hill. You can see the immense palace of the Roman emperors. Almost all the Roman emperors used to live in that palace. Now it's just a pale reminder of the original palace. The palace used to be all faced with marble slabs. You see the halls. And it was decorated with beautiful statues in bronze, in marble, mosaics and paintings of all kinds. The emperor used to live in there with some 2,000 people working for him, the servants, and he lived with his family. There was one section of the palace all decorated with marble. I know you've been in Istanbul and Turkey. Oh, you're going. It was all a section decorated with the black marble from Turkey, the marble from Cappadocia, which was a special blackish marble with a mirrory surface. It was decorated by the Emperor Domitian. This emperor was not a very good one, and he was really afraid of being killed. So he had this part, the part of his apartment was decorated in this marble, so he had a kind of mirrory surface. Here on the right hand side, this is a palace which was built at the time of Mussolini in the 1930s. Originally was used as the Ministry for Africa. This means that when Italy conquered parts of the African countries, like Ethiopia, it was built for that reason. Now it is something more peaceful. It is part of the United Nations. It's known as the FAO, the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations for solving the problem of food in the world. And here is an obelisk, all scaffolded on your right hand side, which is an Ethiopian obelisk that was taken by Mussolini during the time of the war in Ethiopia. Was transported, we could say stole or taken as a war trophy from Ethiopia to Italy. And now, because there are some agreements with the Ethiopian states, there is a sacred column or a sacred obelisk to give it back. And that's why it's all scaffolded, because it's hard now to take it, because they are afraid that it could be damaged. But there is a program to to take it back to Ethiopia, because it's like something sacred for us or for the Catholic. So it's gonna be probably back. Here on the right hand side, which is known as the Celian Hill, the Celio, there used to be in ancient times an immense temple dedicated to the Emperor Claudius. And the temple was built after his death, and because you know that after death, usually Roman emperors were considered to be gods. They were deified. They became gods after their death. And that's why a temple was built, and the temple was built for him. There are just a few blocks and pieces of stone which are still existing on the temple of Claudius, which is almost all gone. But it used to be on this hill on your right hand side. Here again we drive by the Coliseum. You see, this is the inner wall. Part of it has been restored. You see the section with the new bricks. That was done back in the 1827. Was one of the major restoration of the Colosseum, because otherwise it was completely falling down. And so they decided to add some new pieces. So as we go round in a moment, if you keep looking on your left hand side, you'll see the original outer wall of the Colosseum, the Alf, the one Alf which is still existing, which is all in travertine stone, the typical Roman stone. And if you have a good eyesight, you can also see that above the arches at the ground floor there are some Roman numbers carved, like XXX, like the numbers which were for the entrances, because people got tickets, and tickets had a number on it. And you know, because it's very polluted. But you can see some of the X carved on the arches. Here on the right hand side, just in 1 second, it's not a big thing, but it's what remains of one of the barracks of the gladiators, closely connected to the Coliseum. It's just a few excavations. And here that we go, probably you can see at the ground floor at the entrance. So the Coliseum had 80 numbered entrances all the way around. So here also you can see part of the Roman Forum from here, the higher part in a moment, and you'll see old scaffolding. Unfortunately, is a temple of Venus and Rome, built by the Emperor Hadrian. You see the scaffolding and the columns was a temple dedicated to two goddesses, Venus or Aphrodite and Rome. Rome is a city but was seen as a goddess. Now we're driving to the downtown area. I mean, we're leaving the ancient heart of Rome and we're driving to the beautiful Trevi Fountain, which is one of the most important fountains in Rome. You know that Rome is known to be not only the city of the Caesars, the city of popes, the city of cars also, because you know we have probably more cars than Christians in this holy city. But it's also known to be the city of churches and fountains. We have some over 500 churches in Rome, almost a church at every corner, and a lot of fountains because Rome is naturally, you know, has a lot of good spring water, and that's why many fountains were built for taking the opportunity of using this good drinking water. And we're going to visit the best and the most popular of all the Roman fountains, which is Trevi Fountain.
You don't have any coins?
So the money.
No, I don't have any coins. Daddy, you have any coins? No, I gave him the only one I had, but I didn't bring any in. Trying to find some Italian money.
Oh, he looked at the Philippines. Armati.
We can pay you back if you
No, I'm going to give you some.
Yeah, but some of them are.
They're just 2 francs, 1 franc. You want some francs?
A point.
Or you want pesetas? You want one of each? Let me give you one of each.
Frank or a hot dog?
See what I have.
We're not proud. We'll take anything. We'll take anything. Just so it's a
Okay.
But you know, it was really hard to build an underground line in Rome for a simple reason, because the ancient city is still partly still buried there. And whenever they started the excavations for the metro trains, they couldn't obviously destroy many things which are in the underground. A lot of buildings in the center of Rome, in their underground areas, they have a lot of ruins. Maybe it's just a piece of a column, but it's demonstrating that everywhere in Rome was extensively built. This area, for example, that where we are now is well, they call it one of the modern streets of Rome, but this is, in ancient times, at the time of the emperors, this was known as the Subura. The Subura was the worst of the neighborhoods in Rome, was a real poor area, not now. And Julius Caesar came from here, even if he became a great man, but he came from the Subura. He lived around here, which was one of the poorest areas in Rome, close to the Forum, because it was very close to the Forum. And as the fires here were, like every day, because people lived, in ancient times, poor people lived in very tall buildings. Very often they were too tall and they were built, the foundations were not deep enough, so they collapsed very often. They were, 80 or 100 flats in these tall buildings, which were known as the insula. I would say the skyscrapers of the ancient times. But the flats were very dark, small, and they used to have not certainly electric stoves, but just fires burning in their houses. So houses were in wood and fires were extremely frequent. So the area of the Forum and of the Colosseum was separated from the poorer area by a wall built with a particular stone, which was a fire-resistant stone. Now they put like a boundary line from the poorer area to the center of Rome to separate and to avoid any risk of fires. We're now driving by one of the most interesting churches of Rome. This is the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, St. Mary Major. This is one of the 4 biggest Roman churches. This is all dedicated to the Virgin Mary. This is just the back side of the church. And this church is belonging to the territory of the Vatican State. This means that, like St. Peter in the Vatican area, once you step in the church, you are no longer in the Italian territory, but you are in the Vatican State territory. You can see now as we drive by, on your left-hand side, the main facade of the church with the beautiful mosaics at the upper floor. This church is also one of the oldest churches in Rome, was built back in the 5th of Jesus Christ. They are contained in a reliquary under the main altar inside the church. And it's the church of Santa Maria Maggiore, St. Mary Major. It's a beautiful church because it's also inside contains a lot of ancient mosaics which give to this church a kind of Byzantine atmosphere because of the decoration, extensive decoration in mosaic. The L'Opera is this building here, faced by palm trees. Obviously, this is an important opera theater for opera in Italy, but sadly is not comparable to La Scala. You probably heard about La Scala in Milan, where there were a lot of first nights with important composers. And Milan and La Scala is one of the oldest traditions for opera music in Italy. But this is a good opera theater anyway. In front of you, just at the opposite end of the street, is a church which is known as the Church of Santa Susanna, Saint Susan Church, which is the national American church in Rome. So it's a Catholic American church. And in a moment you'll see we are on the Via Nazionale, the National Avenue. A church on your left-hand side, which is the Church of St. Paul within the walls. It's a Protestant church, and what is interesting is that this was the first church built in Rome of a different creed, a different cult from the Catholic one, after the unification of Italy. When Italy was unified, it was possible to have religions of all kinds, but before that, as Rome and part of Italy was ruled by the popes, just the Roman Catholic churches were allowed. So after the 1870, we also had a bigger freedom, religious freedom. And it contains some beautiful stained glass by an English artist which was known as Burne-Jones. He's a pre-Raphaelite artist. This is also a good shopping area, mostly now. And it's a modern street. When we say modern in Rome, we mean after the unification of Italy, after the 1870, when Rome became capital, and as a capital needed, to be prepared as a capital city. So this is a regular street. It's not narrow or winding because it was decided, it was not built naturally, but it was, a lot of things were destroyed in the center to make room for a regular and big street leading to the center. Palace or Exhibition Palace. This is a palace which was built after the unification of Italy. It goes back to the year 1910, and it was just built for the art exhibition in Italy. Italy at that time, at the beginning of the century, did not have a place where Italian artists of the time could show their own paintings. So it was built exactly for Italian artists. Now it's a place where we have a lot of different exhibitions, photographic, artistic exhibitions, and the peculiarity of this building is that it has no windows on the outside. Most of the light comes from the ceiling, and also it's artificially lit.
for them to drive us by the Spanish.
There's a carnival up on the top.
They talked, of course, we're going back 20 some odd years ago about
Some of them
guys
are still
would
there.
pinch them.
Yeah, some are still there. That's right.
They're still sitting there.
Some of my friends are still sitting there.
Although they wish they were. Probably as expensive as Oakley's.
Oh, can you imagine?
The police doesn't stop us and to go down a Trevi because every day there is something new here, like a protest almost every day for different things, trade unions or peace protests and so on. So it becomes hard to make a program and to respect it, so we try. Oh, we will have to fight with the policemen probably. But this orange building here is the Quirinal Palace. Formerly used to be the Palace of Popes back in the Renaissance, and from the end of World War II became the Palace of the President of the Italian state.
What are we doing this whole city? Look at that pinkish.
No, the
Pinkish.
steps way out, a little bit out of town.
Look at this.
This is the,
I'm sorry, am I?
yeah, they found it stuck up against a wall over there.
There's police all over the place. How are you not going to stop at the police? There must be 17 million police around here.
Yeah. Uh-oh, one's coming our way. That's right. Giving excuses. Look at these guys standing over here.
Tell them Bill Clinton's in the bus.
This one
Here,
is good enough.
look at the tails here.
Okay, we'll go quickly and then we'll take the bus in a different place, but we can go to Trevi. Sometimes you find really bad ones and they start, shouting, no, like this. Anyway, we're lucky enough.
We're lucking out. All right. We're lucky today.
What the fuck?
That brown building, you see there's a kind of big advertisement on it. The one with the parliament is known as the Palazzo Venezia, Venice Palace. It is now an art museum and a library, but it used to be in the 1930s Mussolini headquarters. And as we drive in the bus, we see that the main building for where the head of the fascist party is now in Piazza Venezia. So we take down the bus, we make a drive-by on the square, and we go to the restaurant for some. What are these? Alexander, what's that building? Oh, this is a church. Two churches, both dedicated to the Virgin Mary. I told you that there's one church at every corner. Yes. The Holy Name of Mary, and the other one is the Church of St. Mary of Loreto. Two churches dedicated to the Virgin Mary, one next to the other. The other end, you can see the silhouette of the Coliseum. And this is part of the Forum. The Forum was the ancient center of Rome. This means that here, now that we drive, you see a lot of remains of the Roman Forum, the main square of the ancient times.
That's the doorway from which Mussolini gave all of his inspired speeches.
Are they all the same?
Sì, sì, no, another thing. This part of this dark too.
Now these churches also. These buses, well, our buses come. buried underneath the street. And because the forum as it is now, it has been done, it goes back to the time of Mussolini when they opened this street. This street was built for military parades from the Palazzo Venezia to the Coliseum. And the forum was exhibited such as it is now. Now you probably saw that some excavations have been reopened because we want to enlarge the area of the excavations. We're going around the square so you can see the monument that we saw before, the monument to Victor Emmanuel II. This monument on your left hand side, I'm repeating just for the people who were on the bus and didn't listen to the explanation, is the monument which was built for commemorating the unification of Italy, which was achieved in the year 1870. The monument was completed in the year 1911 and it is dedicated to the first king of United Italy. The statue of the king is there at the center, is an equestrian statue of King Victor Emmanuel II. The monument also contains the tomb of the unknown soldier, which was added to the monument back after World War I. Here, this brown building with battlements, just in front of you, a bit on the right, is the Palazzo Venezia. Venice Palace used to be, it is now an art museum, but used to be Mussolini headquarters in the 1930s. And Mussolini used to address the crowds from this balcony at the center, the balcony which is just over the door, the main balcony, for the people which were crowding this square. Now it's an art museum, as I told you. Originally it's known as Palazzo Venezia because it's been in the past, back in the 1700s, the palace of the ambassador of Venice, a long time ago. Here again you see the two soldiers constantly guarding the tomb of the unknown soldier, which contains the body of a soldier who died in World War I. So every day it is guarded. The soldiers have a 2-hour shift, and every day there is a different military service. So the monument was built in marmo Botticino. Botticino marble, it's a particular quality which remains of such a dazzling white. We don't restore it very often, such as the other things. It's a particular quality of marble. But you know, this palace, this monument was always disliked by the people of Rome. Because it was like, you know, a kick your punch in your eye, because it's just at the center of the ancient area of the forum. So, and in order to make room for this enormous monument, they had to destroy some of the ancient area nearby. So they say that the location was not exactly a good one for the building. Here, we're just driving as we go to the restaurant in the middle of the Roman Forum. Forum means marketplace, but it used to be the main square of ancient Rome. Here stood temples, here stood the Senate House, the places for assemblies, all the buildings which were the most important and representative buildings of ancient Rome. On this section here, another section of the Forum, which is partly excavated, on your right hand side, you see 3 columns scaffolded, and a few months ago they were free of scaffolding, which is the section that we call the Temple of Aphrodite and the Forum of Julius Caesar, because this part, the Forum, was built by Julius Caesar, and the temple is the Temple of Aphrodite or Venus. In a moment, behind this dome and behind this church, the church of San Luca and Martina, St. Luke and Martin's church, you see a brick building. That is the famous Curia or Senate House. That was the Senate House of ancient Rome. It was built at the time of Julius Caesar originally, so around 50 before Christ, and then it has been restored many times, and it was the place where senators used to make their councils. Also again here on your right hand side, the main area of the Roman Forum. This is the oldest part of the Forum. This means first it started all here and then spread on the other side. So the Roman Forum area. Here on the other side, the Forum of Augustus. This is what remains of the ancient Forum built by Augustus. You see, there is a huge wall. You remember what I told you about the Subura, the poor neighborhood? The wall was here. It's this greyish stone. It's a typical stone from Gabbi. It's known as Pietra Gabbina, Gabbi stone. It's a small town, Gabbi, and it's one of the few fire-resistant stones. And that's why the Forum was considered a luxury area, an important area of the downtown city. It was preserved. So the wall stretched from there all around here to preserve the area of the Forum and to detach the Forum from the poor neighborhood of the Subura. So it was completely detached by this wall. Now you see, it's difficult to have an idea of all the things because many things are still buried. You see how lower it is in ancient times. So that was the level of Rome of the emperors. Obviously, you know, Rome at the beginning was even lower, the archaic Rome. But at the time of, you know, Imperial Rome, which was very important, was this height that you see in the floor. Train station in Rome. That's why the area is also so busy. But you know, today we have, they told me that the traffic was all blocked because there was a protest. So I said it's a crazy day, but every day in Rome is like this. Because now we have protests every day. So it's...
Protests.
Oh.
Well, there are protests for peace against the war. Protests because tomorrow, that I know there is a protest of people working in particular factories like mechanics. So, here, just because we are in this area, on the right hand side, you can see there is a big museum, the National Roman Museum. But what is interesting is that the museum has been built reusing some of the ruins of one of the biggest bathing complexes of ancient Rome, the Terme di Diocletian bath. And you also see, apart from the beautiful fountains, which is built at the beginning of this century, the fountain of the water nymphs, on your right hand side, the Basilica St. Mary Angel designed by Michelangelo inside the ruins of the bathing complex. So Michelangelo designed this church reusing the ruins of one of the biggest Roman baths. You know that this bathing complex could contain some 3,000 people at the same time. 3,000 people were bathing, were having a sauna, having some sport. It was a huge bathing complex like all this entire neighborhood.
Sports, huh? Bathing sports, huh?
What's going on right down there?
Figuring out what the sports were.
Indoor sports.
In the bathtub. You heard about a hot tub party?
Hey, just before we get to the restaurant, let me tell you a joke about Rome. Okay? It's just a joke that you can do with many different nationalities. Let's do it with a German. I don't think there's any German here, so just for fun.
Let's give it to the German.
You know, you know that the Italians usually are known to be relaxed, some kind of lazy, slow, and so. And you know, Germans are very usually always, everything is always perfect and well done and in short time. So there is a person who comes as a tourist, and he asks a taxi driver, a cab driver, says, please, take me to the best places you have in Rome because I want to see something. So the taxi driver drives to the Basilica of St. Peter, and these tourists, oh, it's wonderful, that's a real wonderful church. How long it took to build this? And the taxi driver said, we're more than a century. Oh, no, in Germany we worked hard and this would have been done in 20 years' time. The driver said, okay, if you say so, Italy, no, everything is slow. Okay, then he goes to Trevi. The best of the fountains. Okay, let's go to Trevi. Oh, wonderful. How long it took for building this? Well, some 30 years' time. No. We would have been in 8 years' time. No more. So, you know, the taxi driver is always more and more. You know, he's a typical Roman, speaking the dialect, the slang or something. And then he goes to the Coliseum. He said, oh, wonderful. The Coliseum, the best of the Roman places. It's my favorite. How long it took for building this? And the cab driver, you know, was really angry, mad at this man. You know, man, last night I was here and there was nothing. You know. Just behind Via Veneto Avenue, that's where we are going to have our lunch. And which is one of the most fashionable streets of Rome. You probably heard about a movie maker, Federico Fellini. Fellini was a film director and made an important film known as La Dolce Vita, Sweetest Life, telling about the nightlife and the city life back in the 60s. And especially, you know, all these important people like the movie stars who lived in Via Veneto, at the hotels in Via Veneto. And that's just where we are driving. And we're very close to the restaurant for having some relax. So Just a joke before lunchtime.
Come on, Don. If people want to get
This
on.
is where we ate lunch.
How do you pronounce it?
This is where we ate lunch in Rome.
The stores are closing anyway.
It's a tall hotel. Yeah.
Your restaurant.
The restaurant is straight ahead on the left.
Seguramente en la cocina.
Mindy.
Palace, the tall building on the left, and at the center is a beautiful fountain by Bernini, Gian Lorenzo Bernini, a famous Baroque artist. It's known as the Triton Fountain. The fountain is representing a triton, which is a merman, sitting on a big shell and blowing water through the conch. Now the fountain, at this time of the year, there's probably some problem with the fountain because usually there's a jet of water springing from the conch he holds in his mouth. But after they restored this fountain, because it's all clean again, probably there was some trouble. I don't know why. I mean, in these days I always seen it without the jets of water springing from the top. And Bernini was a great genius of the 1600s. He designed, for example, when we go to St. Peter's Square, he designed the square, he designed many things in Rome. He was the favorite artist of many popes. He worked for different popes and he did many things in Rome. He was not only a sculptor, an architect, a painter, and he also designed, for example, he made, for example, sceneries for the theater and many different things. And only the palace of this family, and then it was bought at the beginning of this century by the Italian government, and that's why it's a National Gallery of Art, containing many beautiful paintings by Caravaggio, Raphael, and different artists. We go along to the Veneto again, and
This is the spot to be.
we will go to the other side of the city, which is on the right bank, is the Holy Bank, which is the Catholic bank, is where we have the Vatican area,
Where all the money is.
and we will visit the Basilica of St. Peter.
Yeah.
The richest thing in the world.
Yep. Richest institution in the world.
Yep.
Are you Catholic?
No.
He was.
Huh?
He was.
Was?
He doesn't go anymore. I guess he still
They
is.
say they have art in there that the world hasn't even seen down in the storage. On storage.
I would not doubt it one bit.
They-
Maybe
I
I'm
was told that by an art history teacher in college that there's art
Yeah.
in the Vatican that the world hasn't seen.
That's what I've heard too.
Because they took and they had all these people over the centuries paid for them here and it's
This enormous palace, which is on your right hand side, is the American Embassy of Rome. It's known as the Palazzo Margherita, the Margaret Palace, because it used to be in the 1800s. This palace
Yeah, it was
used to
set
be
up pretty good
dedicated to Margaret Margherita.
I got a
She was
picture.
the lover of the King of Italy. So she had a nice residence. But you know, he has given a special apartment to him.
That was her palace?
No.
Digs?
Then it was taken by the Italian government, and now it's property. I mean, it's a property of Italy, but the territory is the territory. Once you enter, it's territory of the United States, like many other embassies on this side of the city.
That's US.
Pretty big.
Yeah.
It's huge. Look at it. It goes all the way back.
That's United
Oh,
States.
yeah. Here.
They got the Vatican, not everywhere. But as we walk, you'll see, and we follow the walls of the Vatican. We obviously can go inside the church, there's no problem. But I don't know if after 4, I can make an explanation inside. So what I want to do now is, I'm not going to stop in the square. I prefer to take you inside to explain the alpha hour I have. And then I will explain the square later, because in the square I can explain 6. But not inside, probably inside we have 30 minutes to get an explanation. Then you can be inside as much as you want, but I can't do this like, shouting. Because if the service starts, we have to be, you can go, visit, but silent. So I just skip the square now, we go straight out in the church. After the church we come out and I'll tell you about the church, the square and the rest, okay? That's why I'm just going straight to that place and then I'll tell you the rest. Of the biggest churches in the world. The second one, after St. Peter, is St. Paul Cathedral in London, in size. This basilica was built on this place because here is the tomb of Peter, as I told you. You have seen the square very quickly because we had to come here. Okay, imagine the square, a desert place, a forest place. There was nothing, some 2,000 years ago. And what was there? It was just the circus of Nero. The Emperor Nero had a circus here, and here started the persecutions of the first Christians. And Peter was one of the first Christians persecuted. He lost his life in the circus. Here he was crucified upside down back in the year 64 or 67 AD. We don't know exactly, but it's or 64 or 67. This is usually what is recognized by the church. So Peter was killed in here, was killed because he was a Christian, and he was crucified because of being a Christian. After that, he was buried on the spot. His fellows took his own body and he was buried around here. He is still buried at the same place, which is under the main altar. St. Peter was buried there, and then a lot of people, Christians, came to be buried next to him. So, slowly, he grew a necropolis, which means a burial place, a burial ground. Some centuries afterwards, the Emperor Constantine, decided to build a church to remember Peter and to protect the tomb of Peter. That was the former Church of St. Peter, which is no longer existing. There was a previous church, which was different from the one you see now. It had been built by Constantine, roughly around the year 320 AD. And that one was destroyed back in the 1506 when they started this one. So this is the second Church of St. Peter, always in the same location, same spot. The only thing is that this is bigger than the previous church, and it was started back in the year 1506 and 1506. And like the joke I told you this morning, it really took more than a century because it was completed and opened back in the year 1626, 120 years afterwards. This church is so important that something like 20 different architects, such as Michelangelo, Raphael, and so on, worked at this church. And so the basilica is one of the richest in the world because it has some 200 different qualities of marbles, many different chapels and works of art. From the other end to here, the basilica measures some 600 feet long. What I want to show you now is in a quick thing, by the time we can get to the center before they start the singing, then you can walk on your own and you can see the things, but let me get a few information. First of all, that statue which is there, that statue is the famous Pietà, the Pietà by Michelangelo. He did that statue when he was very, very young. And that is a statue in marble, which was done and is representing the Pietà. Pietà means lamentation. like the Virgin Mary crying over the dead body of Christ. It is the only signed work by Michelangelo. The Virgin Mary has a ribbon and a sash crossing her breast. It's in marble, and on it it's carved the name of Michelangelo from Florence. So it's the only signed work that we have. The statue is behind the bulletproof glass because in 1972 a madman came in here with a hammer and he broke the arm, the eye and the nose of the Virgin Mary. So after the statue has been restored, it was protected behind the bulletproof glass. It's a masterpiece carved from one single block of Carrara marble. Now what I want to do is we get to the center where we are going to see the main end. We see first of all the beautiful canopy or baldacchino, the baldachin. That baldachin, oh, just to have an idea of this place is huge. You see the letters in blue up there? C-U-E-S and so on. Okay? That is 2 Pedro says, you are Peter, and over this rock I will build my church, and I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. These are the words that Jesus Christ said to Peter. It's like, I'm going to give you my power to you. That's why my keys. Well, every letter is some 2 meters high, 7 feet high. Okay? And the baldachin or canopy is 29 meters high, a 7-story building. It's all in marble. It took 9 years to Bernini. You remember the Trident Fountain? Bernini designed the square, designed the canopy, and designed a beautiful chair of Peter in bronze behind. They were all designed by Bernini. The dome of this church is the dome designed by Michelangelo. It's the highest dome in Rome. Now we go slowly now to the center, and until I can go on like this, I will do when the guardian will, start saying, I have to stop. But I can tell you everything on the outside also, but let's go to the center and then I will give you the free time, okay? Starting from there, it would end here, St. Paul's Cathedral in London. So it's the second biggest church in the world. As we walk, I will just say the name of a few ones in the world, and let's go to the center. Oh, one thing, Paul, as you come back or you go for picture taking, if you look at the 2 chapels, there are bodies of popes which are being kind of, I would say, mummified. And there are the bodies of dead popes exhibited behind the windows. Let's go to sit in this church. The only thing is that they don't use the main altar, because that altar at the center can be used by the Pope and the Pope only. But here every day there are services. This chapel is the chapel of the Holy Sacrament. It's a chapel reserved for people who want to pray when it's open. I mean, not now because we have a service here. The other chapel, the chapel of the choir, is an important one because it's there where they have weddings. So it's a normal church, you can have a wedding, such as a service almost every day. This that we have in this part of the church, you see? This is the main nave. And he's the only Pope in here. The other statues, Pope's statues, are on the side naves. Because this is St. Peter, the statue of St. Peter, which is dating back to the late 1200s. It's a very famous one for a particular reason. People, through the centuries, have been touching and kissing the foot of the saint, forgetting and forgiven and helped. So, after so many centuries, starting from the early 90s, the foot of the saint, when you get closer, you see that the one which is on the left, looking at the statue, it's all worn out. And the lines dividing the toes have been all worn out because of the touch, continuous touch through the centuries. The statue is all dressed was the 29th of June when it's St. Peter and Paul Day. It's a big service and celebration in here, and so the statue has a formal, say, dress. And the beautiful canopy and the dome, everything is like in a vertical line because the tomb of Peter is down there. Peter is buried, the tomb is not visible, but Peter is buried some 10 meters, so it is some 30 feet underneath the main altar. And the Pope now is the successor of Peter. Peter was the first Pope. So he's celebrating just, above the tomb of Peter, the first Pope. So underneath the main altar. And that's why that is known as the papal altar. The Pope only can use that altar. That's why it is not used frequently, because the Pope service is usually Christmas, Palm Sunday, Easter, but sometimes they are done outside where you see the chairs, So, for example, this year Palm Sunday was on the outside. In front of the altar, it's all the lamps burning in the memory of Peter, and down there there is a small reliquary which is containing the palli. The palli is kind of sacred garments. Sì, lo so. Sì, lo so, questo sì, I said 5 minutes, I know. And inside is contained a reliquary with these garments, which are kept for 1 year. They are stoles, usually white with 6 black crosses, which are usually worn by bishops, archbishops or so. So what happens? Every year, the 21st of January, Saint Agnes Day, they take the wool of blessed lambs and they make these stoles, white with 6 black crosses. I have to go so fast. Then they put it in the reliquary for 1 year, close to Peter's tomb. So Peter's spirit, we can say, will touch, these stones. And then at the end of the year, they will be given to the main authorities of the church. And they are down there, even if you can't see, I would say, the tomb of Peter. Behind the canopy, behind this beautiful bronze canopy by Bernini, you can see what is known as the chair of St. Peter. 40 tons of bronze. It's a statue supported by 4 men. Those men are the doctors of the church. And the chair, it's a kind of case, I would say. What it means, case? Because inside there is an ancient wooden chair which was used by the popes in the past. And to preserve it, in the 1600 Bernini designed, he was ordered to design a bronze chair which is containing the older chair. So before I'm going to stop, because of my voice, I want to tell you also when and where we meet. So you can go on your own. You can ask me questions as a single person, but I can't do this kind of gathering. And let's say I have 10 to 4. I would say 20 minutes. Is it okay? I'll be standing here. You can see also.
Come on. I'm in the catacombs. Catacombs. Spooky. Who's this dude? Who's that dude? Who's this dude?
Okay.